Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Right School Matters podcast. We're excited for you to join us today as we have a great conversation with Dr. Matthew Kerlin, the head of school at Mount Paran Christian School. Just a reminder, the podcast is sponsored by Family to Family Relocation and Real Estate, where they are flipping the script, making schools the priority for families on the move to ensure they are fully equipped. And so with that said, we've got Dr. Matthew Kerlin with us. Matt, how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here with me today to have this conversation for folks to learn a little bit more about Christian education. Mount Paran Christian School is here in Kennesaw, Georgia, and has been around since 1976. So it's a staple in the community for sure. Continuing to grow and do excellent things for families in the community. And we're excited to have you here with us, Matt.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about who you are and a little bit about, what you do over at Mount Paran.
Sure. Well, I am obviously the head of school at Mount Paran. Before that, I was a head of school in Charlotte, North Carolina. And before that, much of my professional career was in higher education. I'm a husband of 33 years. I have 3 children, mostly grown. Their ages are 29, 25, and 20. And Christian education is really where I've spent almost my entire career, either on the ministry side or the educational leadership side.
Awesome. And this is your first year at Mount Paran Christian School. And I'm sure it's going well. Very busy.
Yes, I'm in my 8th month. And of course, a school this large with as many people involved, learning all the names and all the processes is a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. But this is an incredibly welcoming place and a great place to be a newcomer.
Yeah, no, I think you're being modest there. It's like drinking them from 5 fire hoses, I'm sure. But I know that the community is very excited to have you. And so welcome. We're excited for what's to come with Mount Paran Christian School. Matt, I'd love to really dive in, spend our time today talking about Christian education. As someone who's been in the industry for many years, you understand that there are many different types of ways that people can choose to have their kids educated. There's lots of different types of schools. The types of schools, they're changing all the time. Certainly in the last 5 years, when the entire country was forced to go to a lockdown and teach virtually, we've seen a huge spawn of online schools, virtual schools, even brick and mortar schools having an online, portion to what they do. And so, Christian education is not new. It has been around for a while. And so, I'd love for you to share 2 to 3 things that you believe are critically important for people to know and to understand about Christian education.
Sure. Well, the first thing I would say is that a Christian school that is genuine and authentically Christian has at its core Christ as the center of all that it does. So that means that a Christian school isn't merely a school where people are nice or moral, or a school that has a particular set of values. Although those things are true, at its core, a Christian school is one that honors and worships and centers all that it does on the person and teachings of Christ.
Yeah, I well said. And I think, Christ is certainly a part of that name. As well as many others who have been around Christian education, that there's lots of different types of Christian schools.
Sure.
And Mount Paran Christian School is known as a covenant school. So can you tell the community and the audience a little bit more about what that means to be a covenant school?
Sure. So 2 kinds of Christian schools, a covenant school and a missional school. At a missional school, there is a faith statement that the employees agree to, but families are welcome to apply from really any background, any walk of life, any religious belief, or none. At a covenant school, all employees agree to a particular statement of faith, but also at least one parent in every family unit agrees to the statement of faith and has a personal relationship with Christ, and agrees that that's going to be central to how we as a school operate and how they as a family operate. Our covenant also includes a request that is, you might call it a requirement in the admissions process, that families be connected and involved in a local church.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thank you. That's good for folks to know, because not all Christian schools are created equal, or their missions are all very different. And speaking of mission, I want to touch on that initial statement in the mission at Mount Paran Christian School, where it's providing academic excellence in a Christ-centered environment. That's been a part of the very core central mission of Mount Paran Christian School for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I spent many years in education, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, or, have had even conversations about this idea that Christian schools are faced with a dilemma. They can either be really Christian and so-so in the academics, or they can be highly academic and so-so in the Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mount Paran's mission statement says that they were going to do both. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means, and any experience you've had where good schools had to either compromise their academic excellence in order to become more Christian, whatever that means, or the vice versa, where they've had to sacrifice the Christ-centered environment? And there's certainly schools here in our own community that have done that in order to become more academically excellent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I first of all would reject the premise that you have to sacrifice one to be good at the other. I think we operate with the genuine belief that all truth is God's truth, and that as God created the world, every academic discipline that we would study at school is an aspect of God's creation. To know it well, to study it deeply and thoroughly and with excellence, is to tap into the truth of God's created world. So I think that sometimes the belief that you have to sacrifice one for the other is rooted in some economic realities. And that is the demographic of families that typically express an interest in Christian education may not have the money for super expensive, high-end private schools. And we have found at Mount Paran that we have families that are deeply committed to our Christian mission, but also have the financial ability to make the sacrifices needed to have their kids at a private school. And we also have substantial financial aid that is need-based that we provide families to help them attend the school. And so I think that the idea that you have to either be good academically or a good Christian school, one or the other, we reject on both philosophical grounds, but also economic grounds, because obviously we're making it work for our families and we're not sacrificing either. Our college placement record is probably one of our strongest testaments to the fact that our students are incredibly well prepared for college when they graduate. In fact, I think this year alone, we've seen our applicants to both Georgia and Georgia Tech accepted at rates that far exceed the average in the state of Georgia. Our AP class pass rate was over 91% this year. That means 91% of our students who took an AP exam made a 3, 4, or a 5 on that exam. And so just those little two pieces of information go to show that our families are deeply committed to Christ and also committed to their students' education. And we've not had to sacrifice one for the other.
Well said. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that, because I know, in my world, when I'm engaging with parents and talking about, potential placement for kids in schools, sometimes that question comes up because they've either know a family who's gone through that experience or that perception of that experience. But like I said earlier, not every school is created equal. And so, Mount Paran Christian School has made that a very core part of who they are, and certainly aspiring to continue to grow in that. And so thank you for sharing that, Matt. You mentioned a couple of the accolades for high school students, going on to some wonderful universities and the AP exams. Shifting down to the lower school, the elementary school, the little ones.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about the opportunities that kids have starting in even preschool, going through the
Mhm.
elementary school, when you consider those two ideas of being academically excellent and a Christ-centered environment.
Sure. Well, I think in our preschool and in our lower school, we recognize that it is developmentally appropriate for those kids to have an ample amount of time during the day to play. So a lot of learning, especially in preschool, is tied up in play. Now, our preschool is not daycare. I mean, students are learning their fundamental building blocks of language. They're learning to the things they need eventually in first and second grade to become good readers. They're learning the building blocks of language, and they're developing socially so that they can function in a school environment. But a lot of that can be done in the context of play, and there's ample opportunities during the day for them to get outside. We believe in recess and PE, and kids need to be active and moving. Sometimes we'll get a question maybe from a preschool parent or a lower school parent, what can we do now as parents to help our kids, prepare for college? And the number one answer I would give them is let them play, particularly let them play outside and away from screens as often as possible. We teach our students how to use screens because they're a normal part of life, and students need to be prepared for that. But we're a cell phone free school during the school day, from preschool all the way through high school. We want them to spend as little time on screens as necessary and to be interacting with each other and developing those people skills that are going to be important to life, not just education, but important to your interactions with everyone in school and outside of school. So yes, academics are important, but honestly, in preschool and lower school, it's equally important that kids get outside and play and roughhouse and breathe fresh air and get some exposure to sunlight and get away from devices to the greatest degree possible.
Amen, Matt. I couldn't agree with you more. I remember reading a book, man, this was probably 15, 18 years ago when I first started my career in education, and it was called What Happened to Recess?
Hmm.
And so, it was at the launch of the No Child Left Behind kind of initiative in the early 2000s, where, we were trying to raise the standard, based on standardized testing measurements of quality of instruction in the classroom. And what schools' response to that is providing much more academic time. Well, and the only way to do that is to sacrifice the non-academic time. And I think it
Mhm.
did such a detriment,
Mhm.
to your point, because there's so much learning that happens through play. Maybe not algebra, but learning how to respectfully engage with a peer,
Mhm.
learning how to be kind and how to serve, and all those other things that are just as important. So I'm
Mhm.
really that's very refreshing to hear you say, because it is critical, and I hope that as we continue to move forward, that more schools, not just elementary schools, but even middle schools and high schools, will create more time for kids to disengage from the academics and engage in the other aspects to help them either reset or engage with one another.
Mhm.
Whether it be a 16-year-old is going to play differently than a 6-year-old, certainly,
Mhm.
but you've got to create time for that. So
Yeah.
that's very refreshing to hear.
Yeah, indeed.
Uh,
One of the reasons we've invested so heavily in our athletic programs and our fine arts programs is that we know that that kind of co-curricular learning
sure.
is so important to brain development that participating in a sport or playing an instrument or singing, those things help engage the brain in ways that support academics. This is why we call those things co-curricular and not always extracurricular, because they're supporting learning. And in fact, there are some things you learn playing a sport or an instrument that you can't learn any other way. So yes, to your point, we definitely know that kids need to be active, that it's good not only for their mental health and their spiritual growth, but it's really good for their brain development.
Yeah, no, thank you. I equate that to considering the whole child when you're
Mhm.
planning your instructional philosophies.
That's right.
Um, so talking about the future, I had mentioned that just previously. What's one or two ways you see K-12 education continuing to evolve and
Mhm.
grow, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years?
I spent a good part of the last fall spending a lot of time with our teachers in small group meetings, listening to them and asking them, what their challenges are, because I consider one of the most important parts of my job, providing our teachers with all the resources they need to be really good at their job, to love our students. And one of the things I'm hearing from our teachers that my colleagues who are heads of school around the country are also hearing from their teachers is that some things have definitely changed since the end of the COVID pandemic. We've seen a growing number of students, at school with attention deficits and with kind of core strength deficiencies and with emotional struggles and a host of learning exceptionalities, whether that's language processing issues or sensory processing issues. A growing number of students who are being identified as having being somewhere on the spectrum. And when we have teachers who've worked here for 20 to 25 years who say something is different about students now, I have to take that seriously. So I think one of the ways education is evolving is teachers are now tasked with providing good differentiation for their students, which is probably more challenging now than it has ever been. Because in any given classroom, a teacher may have a student with various kinds of food allergies, or a learning exceptionality of one kind, or an emotional struggle, and some students who have medicines that have to be managed, and some students who are maybe struggling learners, and some students who are off the chart exceptional learners, and they're all in the same classroom of 18, 19 students, which is our class size. So one of the ways that I think education is evolving, maybe to catch up with where private Christian schools have been for a long time, and that is the recognition that smaller classes are incredibly important, that there are learning disparities that begin to develop when a class exceeds 22 students. Students just learn slower. They're more likely to fall through the cracks. They're less likely to be known and loved by a teacher. So we're firmly committed as a school to smaller classes. And I think education is going to be moving in that direction because all of the research is moving in that direction. Providing good differentiation is really almost impossible when you have a large class. So I think smaller classes that are more attentive to the various specific needs of students, that's going to be the future of education. And the other thing I'll say about where education is moving is this, fewer teachers are entering education, fewer students are studying education at the collegiate level. In fact, that number has dropped incredibly steeply in the last 50 years. So more teachers leave the profession every year than enter it through traditional means, which means as schools, we're going to have to find ways to recruit students or recruit teachers to serve the needs of our students, which means I think we'll see more people enter the teaching profession as kind of a second career option. I know I've done a lot of recruiting through the years to find teachers who have been successful in business, and maybe they've made sufficient money that they're less concerned about a teacher salary, and they've come to work, or maybe they're just tired of the rat race that the business world can be sometimes. We have several employees at Mount Paran now who have come to us from the business world where they were constantly on the clock, and now they're coming to Christian education for missional purposes. And if they've got an inclination to do that and they can learn some of the educational skills, we're more than willing to help people find Christian education as a second career when they're here, for missional reasons, and they have some good instincts in the classroom, and we can teach them how to be really good teachers. I think that's something you'll see more and more often. Teach for America is an example of a program that has recognized this problem, and they've taken graduates really in any academic discipline and helped get them some experience teaching. And I would like for Mount Paran to be a place where people coming into the teaching profession through non-traditional means can find a really meaningful profession.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Matt. It's a little alarming. It's a lot alarming, I guess, technically, when you consider the drastic shift in the number of college graduates who are not graduating with education and no desire to come into the teaching field. And so your point about second career or third career folks, we probably will see in a steep climb in that piece, and schools will be clamoring to figure out, how to find not just warm bodies, but quality. Folks that certainly can be taught how to teach, but have the capacity to do so. I'm looking at our clock here. We're about to hit 20 minutes. So I'm going to shift to a few other questions outside of education, if you don't mind. Like I mentioned earlier, Mount Paran Christian School is located in Kennesaw, Georgia. And Matt, you and Jonlin are new to Kennesaw, Georgia. And so in your, 8, 9, 10 months that you've been here, I'm sure you've been intentional about trying to get out there and see the sights. And so for the folks who are watching this or listening to this, who don't know anything about Kennesaw, Georgia, or folks who may be considering relocating to the metro Atlanta area, tell us a little bit about Kennesaw. What's your favorite restaurant, if you found one, favorite things for you and Jonlin to do, for hobbies or extracurriculars and things of that nature?
Sure. Well, I guess one of our favorite things to do is to go hiking at Kennesaw Mountain. So I've been a hiker for a long time, trail runner, and I like to go to Kennesaw, and I'm probably there at least once or twice every single week. We love to go to Marietta Square, and just about every restaurant we've eaten there, we really like. I think my personal favorite is probably Taqueria Tsunami. My wife really likes Hamp and Harry's. We also like Marietta proper, and just about any place we've eaten on the square has been really, really good. And listen, Kennesaw is a really beautiful place. I mean, it's wooded, it's green. The fall was incredibly beautiful when the leaves were turning. You can sit in our football stadium on a Friday night and you can look out and see the mountain off to the right. And, just about anywhere you drive in Kennesaw, the mountain kind of is there. We're called Mount Paran, but we sit in the shadow of Kennesaw Mountain. And so there's that beautiful part of the city. But also, we've just got great restaurants, and, in the Atlanta area, we have great arts, and we have, some really fun recreational things to do. One of my favorite moments this school year was when our middle school team, which went undefeated and won their championship, they got to play at the end of a Falcons game, at the Benz.
Yeah.
And so that's a fabulous event. And I know that the Benz hosts a lot of athletic and other kinds of events there every year. So, Atlanta has a little bit of everything, and I'll just be, people make a big deal about Atlanta traffic, but I'm going to be perfectly honest. Like, we've not found it to be that big of a deal. Most people learn how to navigate it. They learn when to drive at what times of the day and what roads to avoid. And, I live pretty close to Mount Paran. Most of our families live within about 5 or 10, miles of the school. And, getting to school and home in the afternoons is just usually not a problem. So we love the area.
Awesome. Yeah. I echo your comments about Kennesaw Mountain. You can't know Kennesaw without knowing Kennesaw Mountain. And there's a lot of Civil War history connected to that area too, for history buffs. You mentioned you're a trail runner. Have you been over by Cheatham Hill in that area yet?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's over closer to where I live. And so I'll walk the dog over there, try to get out there a couple of days a week.
Sure. Our school actually hosts a family serve day, which will be Friday, April 25th, where all of our families are invited to serve in the community. We divide up into teams. The team I'm going to be leading will do a trail cleanup on the Kennesaw Mountain Trail over by Cheatham Hill, as a matter of fact.
Awesome. Well, I will be one of the beneficiaries of that. So thank you in advance. Matt, we're coming to the end of our time. I'm going to give you kind of the last word here. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience, whether it's about Christian education, Kennesaw, the future of education?
Yep. I guess 2 quick things. Research shows that one of the things that keeps people from considering private education or private Christian education is that they believe they can't afford it. And so the challenge I would give to any family who is considering it is to go ahead and apply for financial aid. Private schools spend millions of dollars every year providing need-based financial aid for families that really are committed to their mission. So I would say, if you have any interest in private school, private Christian education, number one, visit a campus. So the best way to learn about Mount Paran, you can go to the website, but the best way to learn about our school is to visit our campus, meet with us, ask all of your questions. And then the second thing is apply for financial aid. And you might be surprised that it's incredibly affordable, especially when you consider that more and more states around the country are providing, voucher programs for families to consider private education. In the state of Georgia, we partner with an organization called Georgia Goal, where families can actually devote a percentage of their state income taxes and commit that to the private Christian school of their choice. And now it doesn't go specifically to your kid, but it helps decrease the cost for everyone. And then for families that qualify for Georgia Goal assistance, the more money that's donated to Mount Paran, we can then take that money and give it to families that qualify for Georgia Goal money. So that program, along with the financial aid we provide from our budget, you might be surprised at how affordable the school is for families that might consider financial matters a hindrance for private education. So visit a school, apply for financial aid, and ask all the questions you want.
Very well said. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. Good luck the rest of the way for the school year. Stay warm out there. As you said, we do have 4 seasons here in Atlanta, and this winter one is pretty darn cold this year. So stay warm. Folks, I just want to remind you that the Right School Matters podcast is sponsored by Family to Family Relocation and Real Estate. And so if you are considering moving to Kennesaw, Georgia, or the surrounding metro Atlanta area, Family to Family Relocation and Real Estate is here to assist your relocation needs. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.